Hello and welcome to the Good Stories Podcast. My name's Jody and I'm here with my brother Steven. And let's start today with our top 5 new download locations this week. So these are the 5 places that downloaded the most episodes this week. I don't know who is out there, but thank you for listening. Billings, Montana, Ames, Iowa, Warren, Michigan, Binghamton, New York, and Pensacola, Florida. We're glad to have you. So our story today is one I've read before, but it had been a really long time, decades, actually. It's called The Giver, written by Lois Lowry and published in 1993. And while I did remember the overall plot, the actual story and details struck me new and poignant and sweet and sad all at the same time. It is a wonderful telling with a lot of deep thought problems along the way, and definitely a story to make you think. So, time for a story.
Until the age of 12, Jonas is the same as everyone else. It is with apprehension, therefore, that he approaches the ceremony of 12. This is a rite of passage in the community where everyone is assigned the career that will shape the rest of their lives. His apprehension turns to terror when he is passed over for assignment, but he is then confused when he is selected for a very special role, to be the receiver of memories for the community. It is then that he is introduced to the mysterious giver. Under his tutelage, he learns many things about his new role and about the world in which he lives. This leads to both joy and sorrow, and eventually to a decision that will drastically affect him and everyone else in the community.
Very good. I wondered how you do this one. It's tough.
I wondered how I would sum this up too. Again, with the plot summary, I try not to give away too much. So that's the teaser, but let's give the spoiler alert because we are going to spoil this in a big way. And there are things to spoil in this story. Things
happen. So an age recommendation is interesting on this one because I decidedly remember reading it in 5th grade. I was in 5th grade, so probably 1996 or so. So this had been out a few years. It was pretty new still. And reading it this time as an adult, I was shocked by some of the deep stuff in it. You know, when you're a kid, you just kind of are me. I'll speak for myself. You kind of plow through some big things. This has some big things in it, and it really prompted my own thinking now. So, I don't know, age recommendation, middle school?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm trying to remember when I read it. Like you, I read it a long time ago, and this was a reread, and I am pleased to say I felt it held up. You never know, gentle listeners. If you have read something when you're a child and then read it again when you're a grown-up, you may experience some disappointment with it because not everything that you remembered as great as a kid is great as a grown-up. This one, it was great when I read it the first time. It's great now. And I probably read it about the same time as you. I was probably a little older. So, yeah, I'd say middle school is a good recommendation for this one.
And worth a reread. This is a good one to reread.
It will hit you different at every stage of your life. Certainly as a child, I identified more with Jonas, the child in the story. Now I find myself identifying more with other characters. And it'll hit you different.
So I went back and looked. This is our third story we've done that has a living author.
I was thinking about that. And where I tend to try and do some research on the authors beforehand, I didn't do much on this one. I mean, I read through Lois Lowry's Wikipedia page, and that was about it. And part of it is a sense that I don't really like talking about living authors. She's still alive. She can speak for herself. She doesn't need me to speak for her, and I'll probably speak wrongly for her. So I am grateful to her for this work, and I know other of her works have been in my home. This is the only one of hers that I've read, but she wrote the Anastasia Krumpnik series, and I know that's one that my family has read through, so she's done a lot.
So this one, the Giver won the Newbery Medal, and as well as Number the Stars that came out before this. I haven't read that one, and I think the flavor of it is very different. Speaking about someone still living does seem presumptuous because she's writing and active, and I read her Substack today. I think she has a new book coming out. So, excellent. Lois, if you ever hear this, we are so grateful for your writing.
Yeah, thank you very much for this, and I'm sorry I haven't read the rest of your work, but this has been poignant and wonderful for me. Thank you very much.
So, have you read many dystopian future novels?
Yes.
I feel like I've read a bunch too. It is a broad category, and I think this one fits inside of it, like a young adult dystopian fantasy. And this one's really kind of gentle in how it builds. The framework for how the story is told is really quite positive because you see it from the perspective of, as you said, a little guy turning 12, turning into a young man. Do you commonly read dystopian? Like as a flavor?
Yeah, I would say I do. There's a pretty wide range, both reading and watching. A lot of science fiction is dystopian in its nature. And I guess if you don't mind, I would like to digress a moment and talk about the word dystopia. Because dystopia actually, I think, is a progression from an earlier word that gets used called utopia. So utopia refers to no place. It's literally Greek translated as no place. But Utopia was a book written by, I believe, Thomas More many, many centuries ago that described this idyllic living situation, this condition. Now, those who read it now would argue that it was an idyllic living situation, but this was the kind of idea of utopia. And so utopia usually has this almost paradisical sense, right? This idea of perfection, of if humans could get it together, they would be living in a utopia. Whereas a dystopia is a place that's just awful. It tends to be more what happens when some aspect of humanity's dark nature takes over and then leads to the rewriting and rewiring of the world. Often is totalitarian in some way, but dystopia is something that is a common theme, certainly in speculative fiction. And so this is a fascinating book. And again, Lois Lowry was, I think, just gifted in the way she portrayed this, because this starts in many ways very utopian. And then it doesn't take long before you realize, though, we're not talking utopia here. We are talking dystopia.
I did enjoy her introduction, which she wrote at the 20-year anniversary, so it would have been 2013, that she got all these letters about this book specifically. And people had extreme responses, positive and negative, but big. This book makes you feel things kind of from the beginning, because you're right. It does look very rosy. There's this seemingly happy family of four and they spend time together. It's all very wonderful, but the whole flavor of it is, there's something off. There's a twisting to it, and that's conveyed really well despite all the positives.
Well, I think that's a good intro then into the beginning of the book, because the beginning of the book starts through the eyes of Jonas, as really this entire book is through his eyes. And there's several things we learn right off the bat. The first is that Jonas is initially frightened, but then he talks about how important clarity of language is. And he sifts his feelings, because it's not that he's frightened, is that he's apprehensive. And then he shares with us some things that have happened in his life that help him to make the comparison. And he starts with a story of airplanes flying overhead, one airplane and actually a jet. And this is a really slick and easy way to introduce kind of time frame and to introduce technology. So this is not a primitive society if there is a jet airplane flying overhead. He knows about jets, he knows about airplanes, but he also knows it shouldn't be flying overhead. And he uses this as his springboard in terms of what means frightened and what means apprehensive.
He was frightened when the plane flew overhead because it was against the rules. There are a lot of rules, and he likes the rules, and he likes coming up with the right word for how he's feeling. And the description of the voice through these speakers that speaks immediately, leave your bicycles where they are. Children and adults have bicycles. There's no reference of cars here. They all leave their bicycle, they go inside. He was frightened then. This was jarring and against the rules. But then the speaker's very soothing.
Yeah, it says it had explained that a pilot in training had misread his navigational instructions and made a wrong turn. Desperately, the pilot had been trying to make his way back before his error was noticed. Needless to say, he will be released. This is going to be an important term, and it describes it in the end of this paragraph. For a contributing citizen to be released from the community was a final decision, a terrible punishment, an overwhelming statement of failure. And then he moves on. That's all that the release gets described as here, but it becomes important. And the way she writes this book too, she does a great job with the use of capital letters. Whenever that speaker is speaking, it is in capital letters, so you know it is booming and coming from the loudspeaker. But in these first couple pages, there's a number of other things that get capitalized too, because he's talking about the people that aren't in the streets when the plane is overhead because they've been told to go inside. He's looking out and he doesn't see street cleaners, which is capitalized. He doesn't see landscape workers, which is capitalized. Food delivery, which is capitalized. There are roles. Even the term pilot in training is capitalized. And so you get the sense of not just tasks, not just jobs, but full on assignment of duties, that this is what defines these people, and it's done really subtly just by the way she employs capitals.
It's true. And the description of what the words mean without actually telling us. So, needless to say, the pilot, will be released. Now we know that word is important because he says kids aren't allowed to just use it. Like he used it on the playground once. There's an example, and he got in trouble. Like you have to know that's not something we joke about. But these kids, I mean, even on the playground, they're still kids. But he gets in trouble and he no longer uses that word lightly. Importance of words. It says Jonas was careful about language, but he has a friend, Asher.
Everyone likes Asher.
He's not careful at all. Not in a mean way at all, but he gets mixed up. He's constantly using the wrong words. There's examples of how he used snack and smack together. Those words mean something different, and they try to teach the importance of words in this community. So he gets a smack instead of a snack.
That's what he asked for. They keep trying to teach him. And so precision and importance of language. There is also an introduction here through some of those stories of this almost liturgical interaction that happens between the members of the community. So Asher has to come up and by rote say, I apologize to my classmates. That phrase happens repeatedly. I apologize to X for whatever thing. And
I accept your apology.
Yeah, the response by rote. It's an automatic thing. And so it's a very gentle but definitely crafted way of communication within these people. And kids who, as you know, is hard to get them to pay attention, they put in the effort though. There's a lot of effort into even these young children speaking correctly and behaving as they're expected to within this community.
So at this moment, Jonas is an 11, and that is capitalized, an 11. And in December, not just him, but everybody else in his class will become a 12. There are no birthdays. It's the whole group together. They are 11s. And when you become a 12, it is a big deal. And it says, because he's thinking through the words still, he's eager for that special December event to happen, but not frightened. He is eager. What word is it? And he comes up with it at the end. Apprehensive, Jonas decided. That's what I am.
At 11. Remember that. He's an 11-year-old boy thinking that carefully about words and coming up with the right one, the one he felt with. Now, this is important because he's going to have to explain his feelings. And again, the author does a great job of just immersing us in this. And we immediately move into the family unit, the home, and it looks just wonderful. There's a father, there's a mother, there's a little sister named Lily who is quite a bit younger than him. And each one has a characteristic, but we are introduced to them through this practice of sharing of feelings, the telling of feelings that is done within the family unit in the home. And it's clear this is an every night thing that each one is expected to express and share what feelings they have had over the course of the day. And each one is very different. So it starts with Lily, his little sister, and she's angry. She describes being angry and lifting up a pudgy fist because another kid from a different community that was visiting didn't take his turn on the slide right. It was a big deal.
But they talk through it. This is a ritual. This is not just, hey, let's share our feelings, everybody. This is a required thing to do every night. We discuss our feelings. And the mother and the father talk through Basically, how did you feel when you didn't know the rules? Which is a good constructive conversation to have. Maybe this kid just wasn't aware. Maybe he felt out of place. So they talk through her feelings and that other boy's feelings so she can understand why he would have acted that way. And then by the end, she's not angry anymore. That's a positive thing.
This seems fantastic to me. As I read through this, it's like, well, wouldn't this be a wonderful thing for families to engage in? To have that clarity and transparency and honesty with each other, that you could work through these together and have that mutual support, because the father and mother are nothing but supportive here. They don't criticize Lily, they educate her, they counsel her, they use logic and talk through this. And each one has their own kind of issues in turn. So Lily, the little girl, is anger. The father, we learn, is worried about something at work. And again, capitalization here. He is a nurturer with a capital N. It is his job to take care of new children. Again, capitalized, the new childs. And it's basically this big nursery, and it's his job to take care of them. And he's worried about one of them that isn't doing well and may have to be released. And so he's thinking about what he can do to help this, and he is expressing his frustration over this. The mother, turns out, is basically a lawyer. She's in charge of judgments and decisions, and she expresses frustration over a worker who has broken a rule the second time. She's so angry and so frustrated because she thought this worker had been rehabilitated after breaking the rule the first time. He had been returned to his family unit, but yet he broke it the second time. And so she takes this as an affront and as a failure. And it's clear that if he breaks the rule the third time, he's released. There are no exceptions to that. And so she expresses her frustration and they talk through it. And then finally we come to Jonas, who is so grateful that he had thought of the word.
Yeah. He can describe his feeling, being apprehensive about this event coming up. And again, they talk through it. They work through these feelings for all four of them. And I think it's the mother who says, I am comforted. Mm-hmm. They lay a hand, I am comforted, which again, it seemed really good. And something I caught on this read through was that Jonas's father, Lily asks what gender the baby is, the new child that he's worried about that takes extra care. And they don't say boy or girl in this ever. Male. He's a sweet little male with a lovely disposition, but he isn't growing as fast as he could. And the worry is if he doesn't grow, he'll be released. All their stories, all their experiences end with, well, if it doesn't comply, they will be released. And this is a sympathetic thing. They are sad about that. But there's this developing feeling about being released and what that means.
Yeah, it's the natural outcome to not being a functioning part of the society. You are going to be released. And it is interesting when Jonas expresses his apprehension, they actually send Lily away. This is a little bit different from the other conversations. They have her go get ready for bed, because the plan is for this to be a private conversation between the father, the mother, and Jonas about this ceremony of 12 and about his concerns over it. And again, the discussion that ensues is really very supportive and very wonderful, because the father and the mother both talk about their experiences when they were assigned their roles and how it was pretty clear ahead of time what they were going to be. Turns out that before the age of 12, you actually have several years where after school you get to go volunteer. And most of these children volunteer at a place that fits their interests and fits their personality. So they know if you're always volunteering at the nursery, you're probably going to be a nurturer. And apparently there's this entire council of elders whose job is to watch these children very, very closely and to try and make sure they are assigned to the appropriate position. Jonas is really worried he's not going to like what he gets assigned to. He's worried he's not going to fit. And they reassure him that, no, they're watching you. They're very good at this. They've been doing this. Everybody gets put where they're supposed to be put.
They describe the ceremony a little bit, that there is a naming, and that's when the 50 new children, that's 1 year and younger, always 50, very specific. There can only be 50 children in any year. They get named. Their name is announced, and they are handed to parents who have applied to be parents. No one has birth parent. They're not biological. You apply through a process. There's a lot of process. I feel like queuing belongs in this community. I did enjoy that there's still coffee. There's a lot weird in this, but his dad gets up and pours a cup of coffee. So there's still coffee even in this future.
Continuity. Some things would cause revolt. So coffee has to continue.
But both Jonas's dad and mom are so reassuring because they were so well placed and they've never seen someone not well placed. It always works. So Jonas is temporarily comforted.
And there are some subtle things that pop in here. Lily is still a little girl, although little female is probably how she would be described. But she points out that this is turning into a very long private meeting and asks for her comfort object. Comfort object is a stuffed animal. It's a stuffed toy, but there's been some subtle indicators in the conversation thus far. Earlier, when Lily describes being so angry and about this kid who wasn't behaving properly, Jonas jokes that he was acting like an animal, and they both laugh.
Good one.
But it says neither of them knew what an animal was. And this comfort object has a name. It's elephant. But they don't know what an elephant is and don't actually know that it's an animal. And that's interesting. That took me up a little bit.
It's like they're imaginary. Like they made up a unicorn or something, but it's an elephant. Mm-hmm. So we know, but they don't know. They do discuss the rules a little bit. It says rules were very hard to change. Sometimes if it's in a very important rule, it would have to go eventually to the receiver for a decision. The receiver was the most important elder. Jonas had never even seen him that he knew of. Someone in a position of such importance lived and worked alone. But we know there's something important about this guy. It's very mysterious, though. What does a receiver do that all the other elders look up to him? Because kind of the whole point of this system seems that everybody's kind of equal. You know, you have your designated role, and it's all very equitable across them, except this receiver.
He's a mystery, and we don't know really any more about him than that here. The story progresses, though, and time goes by, and Gabriel, that little new child who wasn't growing correctly, the father actually broke a rule. He actually looked at his number and saw what his name was going to be. He's not supposed to do that because, again, the child doesn't have a name until it's 1 year old. But this makes us like the father, right? I mean, he has some compassion, or seems to.
He's a nurturer.
Yeah, and so he has applied to have this little male come and stay with them. As a nurturer who works the day shift, he doesn't think much of the night shift. They're clearly not helping him. And Gabriel, who they now know his name, although it's not his name and they're not supposed to say it, the big problem is he's not sleeping through the night. And so the goal is by bringing him into their unit, they might be able to help with that. And again, this is a pretty big concession because there's only supposed to be 2 children, a mother, a father, and 2 children. And so they're clear that they're not supposed to get attached to this new baby. It's there, but it's purely for kind of work purposes to try and make it successful for the community. Because as you said, there's only 50 children a year. There can be no more than 50. But if some fail, there can be less. And so it's in the community's best interest for this new child to succeed.
And Gabriel, the baby, the new child, they notice immediately something different about him. He has pale eyes. Nobody has pale eyes in this community except Jonas. And he says another 5, or a female 5 who he had noticed before because she stood out. This is very different. Everybody has dark eyes except for these very few. And the family does take to Gabriel, but he's really not thriving. The problem with not sleeping is he's not growing. And so if he doesn't thrive by the time of the ceremony, he'll be released. So the dad really goes above and beyond here, the father, to support this little baby. And it is very touching.
And that initial interaction, though, where they see the child and they see the pale eyes, Lily, who is a little female, makes a faux pas because she points out his pale eyes, just like Jonas. And this makes Jonas very uncomfortable because it means he's different. Lily has expressed how he is different from the others. And that's just not okay. That's something you're not supposed to do. He kind of covers and moves on with it, but you can see how much this hurts him, that he has been branded as different in some way because of these pale eyes.
And you're just not supposed to say it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to notice or comment on any differences among people. It says mirrors are very rare, but he's still thinking about those eyes too. And he comes up with a word. He's very good at vocabulary, this guy. Depth. The pale eyes have some depth to them in this brand new baby face.
The new child does have its own comfort object, and they ask the father, what is it? And he responds, it's like he looks at a label, hippo. And they go, oh, hippo.
Hippo.
They don't know what that is, but hippo.
And Lily decides or announces very rashly that she wants to be a birth mother, capital letters. That's the role she wants when she gets hers when she turns into a 12.
Because this little baby is so cute.
Her mother scolds her. For the most part,
her down.
They're very positive most of the time, but in this, she scolds her and says there is very little honor in that assignment. And so there's this suddenly one role we hear about related to babies that has very little honor assigned to it. And you learn that they can have 3 births, that's all, and they spend the rest of their years as laborers.
And they don't even get to bring up the baby. They don't meet the baby because the baby goes to the nurturers. And so 3 births and then a labor for the rest of their life. And the mother does not want this for Lily.
Another thing we learned about Lily is her hair ribbons are always messy. And the speaker announcements are targeted. They don't say a name. That would be against the rules.
Calling somebody out is different.
But attention, this is a reminder to females under 9 that hair ribbons are to be neatly tied at all times. It's Lily, we're looking at you. And they don't get angry about these ever. This is a shameful thing. This is something of reproach that they are meant to learn from. And Jonas knows what it feels like because he got called out once for taking an apple.
Attention. This is a reminder to male 11s that objects are not to be removed from the recreation area and that snacks are to be eaten, not hoarded. Yeah, that one struck home because he did take an apple. But we are led through his thought process and we are led through why he took the apple because it wasn't greed. He was playing catch with the apple with his friend Asher. Remember that kind of bumbling little boy who can't ever use the right words? They're best friends. And Jonas is playing catch with this apple. And then the description here is so good, I'm just going to read it. But suddenly Jonas had noticed, following the path of the apple through the air with his eyes, that the piece of fruit had, well, this was the part that he couldn't adequately understand. The apple had changed, just for an instant. It had changed in midair, he remembered. Then it was in his hand, and he looked at it carefully, but it was the same apple, unchanged. The same size and shape, a perfect sphere, the same nondescript shade, about the same shade as his own tunic.
Nothing remarkable about this apple, but it happens again. He continues playing with it because it looks normal, and then midway through the air, it changes. So he takes it home. He breaks a rule, gets called out about it, and he remembers it, though. He makes his apologies. He does what he's supposed to do, but he doesn't express that feeling to his family. That I think he calls it bewilderment. Mm-hmm. This is weird. He doesn't understand what happened, what that change was, not even enough to describe it.
Yeah, he couldn't explain it. There was some change. And so again, not greed. He wasn't hoarding an apple. He was trying to explain this change. But again, he took the chastisement to heart and quickly surrendered the apple and moved on.
I like the parents don't even have to say anything. They just see the apple on his desk. Like, they know. He knows. Everybody knows.
It's a really effective system.
So it's still ahead of the 12 ceremony that's coming up soon, but Jonas still has these volunteer hours. So he's riding around on his bicycle, and they get a lot of freedom in this. I think they get their bike when they're 9, which is a big step up in maturity and trust, responsibility.
Lily doesn't have her bike yet.
No.
Yeah.
That's the one rule that everybody breaks, is they teach their younger sibling or their child how to ride a bike before they get their own. So it's this joke when the kids actually get their bike, because it's supposed to be their first time ever on one, that they can all just ride it perfectly away because they've been practicing. It's like the one rule where they really warm up to it and kind of have fun with it.
Some sanctioned rebellion there. Yeah.
But in this case, Jonas is going to volunteer. And like you said, you get to choose where to go. which is actually really neat, where they can kind of over time establish where their interests lie. They can dabble in different areas. But today, because Jonas is still dabbling, most of the other 11s, soon to be 12, they've kind of picked their area. You can kind of anticipate where they're going to be.
Yeah, that's a big problem for Jonas because he has really kind of scattered around. There is no one area that he has gone to. So he has no idea where he's going to be assigned or even what he wants to be assigned to. There are jobs he knows that he doesn't want, but that's about as far as he can go. So here, as they're getting close to the decision, he basically figures, well, it doesn't really matter now. So he's going to go spend time with his friends. And there's two of his friends, Asher and Fiona, and they are volunteering at the House of the Old.
In mine, I underlined just the different roles that are capitalized here, because just in the story, many of them are mentioned. So there's rehabilitation, there's recreation, there's the nurturing center where his father works, food distribution, and yes, the House of the Old. And the House of the Old sounds wonderful. It seems as you get older, you are taken care of and protected in this area. And these young kids come and they actually help in the bathhouse on this day. And there's this ritual to it. And so they have, it seems like a uniform. They all kind of wear the same thing. But in the bathing center, they actually help bathe these elderly people. And it's quite sweet. And they know one another. There's relationship and conversation. And Jonas gets assigned to a lady whose name I forget.
Larissa.
Thank you. He knows her. She knows his name. And Larissa is telling this young man, as he helps bathe her, it's this wonderful, warm time for her, being comfortable, and just a lot of trust is expressed in this time. But how there was a celebration of release. Someone was released. But here there is this celebration, and he was so happy to go.
Yeah, because this wasn't a release for an infraction of rules. This wasn't a new child who had failed to gain weight or progress. This wasn't a pilot who had broken the rules and gone over top. This wasn't somebody that had 3 strikes on them and had to be released in shame. This was essentially a retirement. And they got to review their lives. Everyone got to say goodbye. There was basically a party. And then the release ceremony commenced. And Larissa laments that the children don't get to see this because it was so beautiful and so affirming. And so we've heard a lot about release. And up to this point, it's always been kind of scary and spooky. But in this sense, the release seems rather wonderful.
She says that the man's name who's released, his name is Roberto, that he bowed to all of us, then walked like they all do through the special door in the releasing room. But you should have seen his look. She's talking to Jonas. Pure happiness, I'd call it. And they care about words. She saw this man, her friend, go into the releasing room with pure happiness. And so Jonas wonders, what happens? Where do you go? He thinks of what this elsewhere must be when you're released. Because in some cases, it is a punishment. But here, it's this wonderful celebration, pure happiness.
Yeah, this chapter is beautiful in a lot of ways. As you talked about, the way the old are treated here seems wonderful and so much better than the way we often treat the elderly. And then there's a couple other things that sort of came out. One, this is where we meet Fiona. So Fiona is very much loves this place. So this is where she is going to be. Everybody kind of knows this is where she spends her volunteer time. The other thing that he talks about is this is really the only place that you see anyone undressed. So you are not allowed to even show any sort of undress to anybody else. But here with the old, as they are bathing, the nudity is just part of it. And it's not an issue and it's not a big deal. And that just gets mentioned in here. And that will kind of play a role in the next chapter.
Yes, so we mentioned the evening ritual with the family is where you share your feelings of the day. But there is also a morning ritual. And you must comply. Keep in mind, there are speakers in these homes, but you must report your dreams. And it says usually Jonas doesn't contribute much. He doesn't have dreams very often, but he had a dream this time, and he doesn't want to share it. Keep in mind, this is an 11-year-old, almost 12-year-old boy, and he had a dream he didn't want to share, but he has to.
And it never occurs to him to not. He has a hard time expressing this, but The idea of lying is so far from his mind. This is what you do. And it's clear that you can share any dream you have. And not only can you, but as you said, it's an expectation.
And here he describes this dream, even though he doesn't want to, and it's about that girl who's also going to be a 12, Fiona. And it's in the bathroom in the bathing house, but he wants her to get in a tub. And so it's this really uncomfortable dream for him, and he's upset, but she's laughing, and they actually send Lily to school, and the mother speaks to Jonas here. And again, I thought this was quite wonderful until it wasn't.
Finally, she sat down beside him at the table. Jonas, she said with a smile, the feeling you described as the wanting, it was your first stirrings, capitalized, stirrings. Father and I have been expecting it to happen to you. It happens to everyone. It happened to Father when he was your age, and it happened to me. It will happen someday to Lily. And very often, Mother added, it begins with a dream.
Apparently, the speakers mention this as well regularly. Attention, a reminder that stirrings must be reported in order for treatment to take place. So, this is totally normal, and she speaks to him about it. It's all very positive until she says, you get to take your pill now.
Yeah. Well, he asks if she needs to report it because the speaker said, I have to report this. And she says, you already did. That's what talking to me was. You have reported it. And yeah, this pill. Now, that doesn't really bother him so much because he says, oh, Asher takes pills. And she says, yeah, everyone takes pills. I take pills. Your dad takes pills. Everybody takes a pill every morning. It's a requirement. You must do it. And so you have to take your pill every morning. And again, he's on board with this and he pops the pill. And it talks about as he's pedaling off to school that wanting, that stirring, it goes away.
He does ask how long he has to take the pills. Your whole life until you enter the house of the old. But it becomes a routine. You'll get used to it. He feels like he's growing up. He takes pills like everybody else now. He's part of the group in a society where being different is not okay. You don't want to be different. You don't want to talk about being different, any of that. So he actually feels okay about this.
The next chapter moves on with Mother actually tying the ribbons in Lily's hair. This is great because Lily can't get the ribbons to tie to where they hold. And this is important because these are the ceremonies. We are now there. We are in December and the ceremonies are going to happen. Jonas is obviously apprehensive about the ceremony of 12, but everyone has a ceremony up to 12. There's a ceremony for the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, the 5s, and on up. And so this is a 2-day process that the entire community sits through, and it's a great celebration, and it's a ritual that everyone participates in, and Mother is not going to let Lily's ribbons fall out this day, so she ties them for her.
It's a big deal for everybody. So the ones get their name announced and the parents who applied have their baby handed to them. Gabriel gets an exemption. He kind of gets a pass on this one. He gets an
extra year.
He's going to live with Jonas's family from now on. The nurturer, the father's still taking care of him. I forget what happens with the 2s and 3s. I think Lily gets a jacket with buttons. Mm-hmm. So this is a big deal when you upgrade to the button jacket.
Buttons in the front.
Yes.
Because up to that point, the buttons are in the back. And this is to teach interdependence because you can't button your own buttons in the back. So you have to have somebody else do it for you. But as you get older, you also have to learn how to do your own buttons. And so now she gets buttons in the front. And she is excited because the next year she's going to get a bike. So she's almost there.
Almost. Oh, I found it. Gabriel had been labeled uncertain and given an additional year. So he's still on the fence.
There's one other major ceremony that happens. As we said, there's only 50 children for each year. And in one of the years, we learn that a child had died, had fallen into the river and drowned. And the community is very sad about this. But one of those 1 years that's now given a name is given the name of the drowned child. This is now Caleb. And so the name, there's this whole chanting ceremony where the name got spoken lower and lower and lower for the old child that had passed away, and then louder and louder and louder for the new Caleb who has now come to replace it. And so the names are important, and the names continue and move forward in these different years. And again, in our society where we have so little in our community to tie us together, so few commonalities, so few bindings, I really kind of loved this. The idea that everybody came together and there was a role and an expectation. This really was kind of a utopia type picture to me. But for every year, as I said, there's a different ceremony, some of them bigger than others. But this is a long process and it goes a 2 full days. And the ceremony of the 12s doesn't happen until the second day.
I'm going to read this paragraph about the ceremony because I liked it too. So this new Caleb is a replacement child. And this is the entire community had performed the ceremony of loss together, murmuring the name Caleb throughout an entire day, less and less frequently, softer in volume, as the long and somber day went on, so that the little four, the boy who drowned, seemed to fade away gradually from everyone's consciousness. And then at this special naming, the community does it backwards, where they get louder and louder as they announce this replacement child. It's called a murmur of replacement ceremony. I liked that too. It's a really amazing commemoration of loss, but also moving on from that loss. Really lovely.
Yeah.
So yes, day 2.
Day 2.
Back to Jonas.
Jonas is so worried. Now, as we spoke earlier, each of these children has a number. And at 1 year, when you're given to a family, you get a name. And so Jonas is how we know him, but he also knows that he's number 19. They all know their number, and Jonas is number 19. And when they do this particular ceremony, it goes in order. It starts with number 1 and very orderly goes through. So he's paying attention as the numbers go up, and he's watching for his friends and who gets named what.
So Fiona's up, and she gets assigned to the House of the Old. And again, there's this ceremony with it. This is a big deal to this community and to the individuals. They're given their role, their career, and in a lot of ways, their identity and title for the rest of their life. So Fiona ends up there, and Jonas is really worried about his goofball friend. Yeah. What are they going to do with that guy?
He gets a whole speech, though, from the speaker. Everyone likes Asher. This is where he talks about the smacks and the snacks. And, yeah.
But he gets assigned to recreation. He gets to do recreation for the community. And he is so excited. This is a perfect fit for Asher. Everybody, perfect fit. And they go up to number 17 and number 18. And Jonas knows it's his time. He's number 19.
Runs his hand through his hair, pulls his tunic down. He's ready to get up. And then
they announce number 20. This never happens. It's an error. They don't make mistakes.
For a moment, Jonas wonders, did I forget my number? Am I a different? No, he didn't forget his number. He is number 19, and they pass right by him. They get through his entire class. And Jonas at this point is just terrified and crestfallen. And is he going to be released? What is he going to be? They've forgotten about him. But it's not just Jonas. It says the audience was clearly ill at ease. Everyone knew this, and this is where the chief elder steps back up. I know, she said in her vibrant, gracious voice, that you are all concerned, that you feel I have made a mistake. She smiled. The community, relieved from its discomfort very slightly by her benign statement, seemed to breathe more easily. It was very silent. And she apologizes to the community for causing anxiety. They accept it, of course. We accept your apology. And she apologizes to Jonas in particular. And she tells him that he has not been assigned. He has been selected. He has no idea what that means. None of them seem to know what that means. But then she goes on to say that he has been selected to be our next receiver of memory. Then he heard the gasp, the sudden intake of breath drawn sharply in astonishment by each of the seated citizens. He saw their faces, their eyes widened in awe, and still he did not understand.
The receiver was the very important elder that we'd heard some mystery about.
So the chief elder goes on. Such a selection is very, very rare. And again, this is in a society where being different, being rare is not good. They all want to be the same, and Jonas wants to be the same. But the chief elder told the audience, our community has only one receiver. It is he who trains his successor.
So we know it's a big deal. Jonas knows it's a big deal, but he doesn't know what it means. This is a long speech she shares. The chief elder shares that we failed in our last selection. It was 10 years ago, and there's such pain with it, she doesn't go into it. In Jonas's entire life, nobody has mentioned this to him. He's been in this community listening to the stories, part of everything, a contributing citizen. No one's ever mentioned this. That would bother me so bad.
And it bothers him. And you're right. This is a long speech. And she talks about the receiver in training cannot be observed, cannot be modified. This is stated quite clearly in the rules. He is to be alone, apart, while he is prepared by the current receiver for the job which is the most honored in our community. So this role that is the most honored also sets him apart and makes him different. There's nothing about that Jonas likes or is interested in.
And here she calls out his differences, which is a very uncomfortable thing for anybody on a normal day. And this is in front of the entire community. And she lists them with details, actually. Intelligence, integrity, courage. She tells him at some point that there's going to be pain, physical pain with this. But she also says that you are brave and that you have wisdom.
Wisdom is the last of these points. Intelligence, integrity, courage, and wisdom. And she describes his intelligence, his integrity, and his courage. The wisdom, he says, he will learn through his training. She makes it a point that he doesn't have wisdom yet, but that will be a part of the training. And again, he is not excited about this at all, but he is still there in front of the community, and his name starts to be chanted, and it starts low and it gets louder and faster. Jonas, Jonas, Jonas. There's some comfort in that for him, but he still has no idea what is about to happen.
It's interesting. They tell him that he was picked because he has, and this is capitalized, the capacity to see beyond. And it says that he is consumed with despair. Again, we're talking about very strong and specific words here. He has despair in his heart at this assignment that defines the rest of his life here in this community. But they announce his name. You will be trained to be our next receiver of memory. We thank you for your childhood.
Mm-hmm. And like that, the ceremony is over, and then it's done, and he goes home, and everybody else goes home. But all of these children who have now been assigned have a packet. They're still expected to go to school during the day, but then after school, instead of getting to choose where they volunteer, they now begin their training. So, the engineers have lists of numbers and, mathematical things they have to learn. The people in the House of the Old have guidelines and rules and things that they don't know yet. Jonas has a packet as well. And the next day, I can't remember if he opens it that night or the next day, he opens it and he is surprised to find there's not much there. For this role that is the most honored and is terrifying, there's really not much. And I think it's probably appropriate if I just read it. It says, Jonas, receiver of memory, 1. Go immediately at the end of school hours each day to the annex entrance behind the House of the Old and present yourself to the attendant. 2. Go immediately to your dwelling at the conclusion of training each day. 3. From the moment you are exempted from rules governing rudeness, you may ask any question of any citizen and you will receive answers. 4. Do not discuss your training with any other member of the community, including parents and elders. 5. From this moment, you are prohibited from dream telling. 6. Except for illness or injury unrelated to your training, do not apply for any medication. 7. You are not permitted to apply for release. 8. You may lie. And that's it. But wow, what a lot of it that is.
I said the telling of this story is excellent. How he works his brain through this list and how it's described is excellent. It says first that he's stunned and he feels the apartness. He will have no time for friends. He can't tell them anything anyway, and he has to go straight home right after his training every day. There's no other time in his day. He's being annexed. It's funny that the "you may lie" freaks him out entirely. He can't even look at that one until later. He can't even wrap his head around what some of these might mean.
It says he had never within his memory been tempted to lie. He didn't think anyone lied. But now if he's getting this, have other people gotten similar instructions? Are other people lying? He just doesn't know.
And it says the restriction of medication unnerved him because he's had small injuries in his life to date. And they have these amazing pills where if you smash your finger in a door or, fall down on the sidewalk, you request a pain medication and the pain is gone. Just like his stirrings pill, that dream was just gone. That feeling was gone. Same with pain. They don't do pain here. You take a pill.
He does think through it, though, and again, precision of language is important to him. So he reads through that rule again, and he sees the line referencing unrelated to your training. And this soothes him somewhat, because if he were to jam his hand in a door again, well, that's not related to training, so he could apply for that medication to help with the pain. Or the pill for the stirrings, well, that's not related to his training, so he can go ahead and keep taking that one. And he really does think through these, and that is helpful to him because, again, precision of language is so important.
Number 7 was you were not permitted to apply for release. That one doesn't bother him. He's never wanted to be released.
No, who would?
Yeah, he's good.
There was that one story about Roberto that was kind of comforting, but outside of that, release always seems off and odd.
And it says, finally, he steeled himself to read the final rule again. He had been trained since earliest childhood, since his earliest learning of language, never to lie. It was an integral part of the learning of precise speech. Once when he had been a 4, he had said just prior to the midday meal at school, "I'm starving." This 4-year-old boy gets taken to task for saying, "I'm starving," because it's not what he meant. You're not actually starving. That would mean something else. They teach very precise language and it's just carte blanche now. He can lie. What a strange twist.
And he can be rude. He can ask questions and he'll get answers. Everything about this is strange. And so the next day after school, when he pedals his way to his duty assignment, he has no idea what he's in for.
Yeah, I heard once that trust is given until it's broken. And so here, this kind of puts a crack in his trust. If he can lie, like you said, could others lie? Are they all lying? He has no idea what to expect. It all seems quite pleasant, though. He gets to ride with Fiona because it's by the house of the old. And he says there is an apartness now because the other kids don't know either. What is it he's going to do? And he did ask his parents the night before about the other receiver because the elder had said they had picked one a decade ago and it didn't go well. And he asked his parents, like, well, what happened to him? And they're like, no, not a him. It was a her. She disappeared. Gone.
And she did not have that ceremony that Caleb had had. The name, he asked, what's her name? Never to be spoken. They won't say it. Nobody is going to get that name again.
But Jonas has a new title. This attendant welcomes him. Welcome, receiver of memory, she said respectfully.
Isn't the situation great? I mean, this reminds me of like 1950s businessmen in movies where you walk in and there's this attendant, this secretary who's there, whose job seems to be to do everything for the guy behind the door. And yes, he is welcomed in this formal way, and he is
It's like at the end of the Muppets, brother.
It's exactly like the end
She
of the
pushes the
Muppets.
buzzer to open the door.
That's such a great movie.
Sorry. Moving on.
Moving on. He walks in and he sees the old man. And he walks up to him and says, he bows slightly and said, "I'm Jonas. I know. Welcome, receiver of memory."
He also notices immediately the books. There are books everywhere. It says he had never known that other books existed. I love the picture of the books on the wall.
Yes.
Just to go from none in your life to a whole library, amazing.
The only books he had ever seen were things like a phone book, lists of rules, obviously. There were these very practical books, so clearly he can read. The idea of a book isn't foreign to him, but he had never seen books, and any other books have Forbidden's the wrong word. I don't think he even knew they existed, that there was any purpose to other such books.
He says, Jonas stared at them, the books. He couldn't imagine what the thousands of pages contained. Could there be rules beyond the rules that govern their community? Could there be more descriptions of offices and factories and committees? It's totally outside his mental purview that there could be more than has been part of his community so far. And he apologizes to the man. The elder says, "Sir, I apologize for my lack of understanding." And the right response is,
I accept your apology.
He doesn't say, the elder does not say it.
Never.
Jonas waits for it. No.
And he even tells Jonas, no apologies. We don't have time for that. There's too much. We have no time for that for us. And remember, in his rules, Jonas is allowed and even maybe required to ask questions, and he is exempted from rules of rudeness. Jonas does not take to this right away because he's been trained in this for his whole life. But everything he's about to encounter with this man is entirely different from anything he's experienced up till now.
The man looked at Jonas thoughtfully, silently. It was a look that combined interest, curiosity, concern, and perhaps a little sympathy as well. Finally, he spoke. Beginning today, this moment, at least to me, you are the receiver. And the man says, I have been the receiver for a long time, a very, very long time. You can see that, can't you? And Jonas nods. This man is shrunken, wrinkled, and doubled over. But he actually describes how he's not really that old. He doesn't actually need to be in the house of the old. Something has made him old. Something has aged him.
And he starts to talk about the memories. He says, I am so weighed with them. Jonas felt a terrible concern for the man suddenly, and the man goes on. It's as if the man paused, seeming to search his mind for the right words of description. It's like going downhill through deep snow on a sled, he said finally. At first, it's exhilarating, the speed, the sharp, clear air, but then the snow accumulates, builds up on the runners, and you have to push hard to keep going, and... He shook his head suddenly and peered at Jonas. That meant nothing to you, did it? He asked.
It meant nothing to Jonas. Snow, hill, downhill, sled, all of this is completely foreign.
Doesn't recognize any of those words. And this is where things really start. So this book is only 200 pages. I mean, it is not a long book. We are halfway through now. Again, that first 100 pages has gone quick because this is a masterclass in world building. But this is really where things start. And the old man says, well, I guess that's as good a place to start as any. And he instructs this little boy to take off his tunic to bare skin and lay down on a bed on his stomach. Can you say uncomfortable, especially in a world where taking off your tunic requires immediate apology? But again, nothing is the same here as it's going to be. And Jonas, again, apprehensive, does what he's told, and he asks basically, what are you going to do? And the man tells him, I'm going to transmit the memory of snow, the old man said, and placed his hands on Jonas's bare back. It says Jonas felt nothing unusual at first. He felt only the light touch of the old man's hands on his back. He tried to relax, to breathe evenly. The room was absolutely silent, and for a moment Jonas feared that he might disgrace himself now on the first day of his training by falling asleep. Then he shivered. He realized that the touch of the hands felt suddenly cold. At the same instant, breathing in, he felt the air change, and his very breath was cold. He licked his lips, and in doing so, his tongue touched the suddenly chilled air. It was very startling, but he was not at all frightened now. He was filled with energy, and he breathed again, feeling the sharp intake of frigid air. Now, too, he could feel cold air swirling around his entire body. He felt a blow against his hands where they lay at his sides and over his back. And then he proceeds to feel snow falling. He sticks out his tongue and catches it on his tongue. And then he feels a rope in his hands, and he's lying on what we recognize as a sled with runners. And he begins going down a hill. And all of a sudden, he knows the word hill, which was not part of his vocabulary before. And this experience and these words and sensations are coming to his mind. And then at the end of it, he comes back into the room, and the man asks him, how do you feel? Surprised, he said. Again, clarity of speech is still important to him. But he describes it as fun, that it was exciting, and he loved it.
Says it makes him smile, and that he can see, even though his eyes are closed, he's living these memories, and it's exhilarating. And I love this. No voice made an explanation for the word sled, for the word hill. The experience explained itself to him as he experiences this, and then he's back in his own mind, in his own body, but now he carries it with him. He received this memory, and now it's his. There's all kinds of amazing things in this first day of training. One is that the elder, the man, turns off the speaker.
Yeah.
This is a private thing. So not only does he remove his tunic and lie on a bed, like I said, so uncomfortable, he turns off the speaker. Jonas has never seen someone turn off a speaker. He didn't even know you could do that.
Nobody else can. The speakers in his family unit don't have an off switch. There are no off switches for the speaker except for here in the room of the receiver of memory.
And before the man shares about Snow, he's trying to tell Jonas what they're even doing. And he says, I'm going to share memories with you. And Jonas has been in the house of the old. He's like, that will be fun. I enjoy listening to people share about their lives. He's like, no, it's not like that. It's the memories of the whole world, before you, before me, before the previous receiver, and generations before him. And it says that this man experiences these again and again and again. And that's where he's reminded of the weight of snow. And he shares this wonderful memory with Jonas. But he doesn't share the weight of snow with Jonas. He shares the sensation of snow falling. It's as Jonas tries to pick the words out, it's soft, but there's no pain. You know, there's this prickling, and it could be sharp, but there's no pain with it. It's this wonderful sensation. And like you said, he comes out of this exhilarated.
He does notice, though, that the elder is very tired and fatigued. And the elder explains that he had to draw that memory from way back. Way, way back. And Jonas is confused because, again, that was delightful. And he wants to know, why can't we do this? Why don't we have things like snow? Why don't we have things like hills? And the elder has an answer. Jonas can ask questions and he can expect it to be answered. And the elder answers, climate control. Snow made growing food difficult, limited the agricultural periods, and unpredictable weather made transportation almost impossible at times. It wasn't a practical thing, so it becomes obsolete when we went to sameness. And again, the way she uses capital letters, what a brilliant author. Sameness, and this is capitalized. This becomes really the guiding light of this situation. And this is the first area we see it in. Now, we have seen it expressed for half the book, this idea of sameness. But here we see it as an ideology that the old receiver of memories understands clearly.
Jonas learns from him that the memory of snow that he just shared with Jonas isn't the man's anymore. He gave it to Jonas. And the man says that was a little weight off. He's carried these memories for so long. It's actually an unburdening to share, to give them to Jonas. Jonas as the receiver of these memories. But Jonas is worried. He's like, that was a wonderful memory. I don't want to take it from you. And the man kind of laughs at him and says, I have thousands like that. I gave you one. He carries the burden of memory for all time with him. I can't imagine that weight.
No.
Like my own memories are a lot sometimes, good and bad. So if we just shared our two memories together in completion, just the weight and burden. So for him to carry the memories of the whole world, even if it's just this whole community, that's immense.
And I want to talk more about that, but I think we need to go through some more memories before we can really feel the weight of it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't stop here. This is just the first day. And so now Jonas has experienced snow and he loved it. And now the elder gives him another memory, and this one is sunshine, and he loves it. Now let's think for a moment. If he is being given the experience of sunshine by the elder, that means he has never experienced it himself. So this is a world he has lived in to the age of 12 with no snow. Okay, you can argue whether that's good or bad, but no sunshine. The warmth of the sun he has not been able to experience. I don't see how you could possibly see that as anything but a deprivation. And that's kind of the way Jonas feels here. It's like, why did these go away? And even more so, he states, because there's a question that's bothering him. He states, "Sir," he said, "the chief elder told me," she told everyone, "and you told me too, that it would be painful. So I was a little scared, but it didn't hurt at all. I really enjoyed it." And then the elder says, "Well, okay, I think I can help you understand this at least a little bit."
He says, "My previous failure gave me the wisdom to do that." The man, will speak about the previous selection of receiver. Nobody else has mentioned it at all, ever. He mentions it willingly here, but he does share another memory. This one is pain.
But I love the way he does it, because I do think the elder demonstrates wisdom, because he has given these good memories, these pleasant memories that Jonas just loves. And so now he returns to a memory of sunshine, which is a wonderful thing. And Jonas feels the warmth, and he feels more warmth and more warmth. And then he feels pain on his skin. He has experienced his first sunburn. Now, we've all experienced that, but Jonas hasn't even experienced sunshine. And so now he has seen the pleasure of the sun, but also the pain that can come from it. And he says, "It hurt a lot, but I'm glad you gave it to me. It was interesting, and now I understand better what it meant that there would be pain." He says the man didn't respond. He sat silently for a second. Finally, he said, "Get up now. It's time for you to go home."
The old man nods goodbye to Jonas, and it says that he looks drained and a little sad. But what an experience to go from sunshine to too much sunshine. These are the extreme, the wonderful aspect of just warmth on his skin to too much warmth and the sunburn that goes with it. But now he thinks he understands pain. He got it. Check.
He's got a flavor anyway.
Yeah.
And this chapter ends beautifully. "Sir," Jonas said shyly. "Yes, do you have a question?" "It's just that I don't know your name. I thought you were the receiver, but you say that now I'm the receiver, so I don't know what to call you." The man had sat back down in the comfortable upholstered chair. He moved his shoulders around as if to ease away an aching sensation. He seemed terribly weary. "Call me the giver," he told Jonas.
That's actually probably my favorite line in this whole thing, where he's changed the nature of who he is by sharing them with this boy he selected to carry the weight of memory. He's the giver.
Yeah. So we now have a receiver and we have a giver. And what follows for several chapters now is the development of that relationship and the development of the role as Jonas gains, I'll just say he gains wisdom. This is what Jonas was told he was going to learn in his training, that he didn't have it yet. The giver has it. To his pain, to his burden, to his weight, he has wisdom. And Jonas starts to pick some of that up as he proceeds through the training. And the next chapter I love, because the next chapter is where it explains what happened to that apple. That change that Jonas saw earlier that he could never explain.
On his way to visit for his daily training, because this is an everyday thing. He goes to school and then he goes to train with the giver. And again, it's right by the house of the old. And that's where Fiona works. And she walks into work and he sees a change in her. Again, for an instant. But it was just like with the apple. Something happened there. And he actually gets to talk about it with the giver. And he's always hesitant to ask questions here at the beginning. But always you may ask me anything. And he says, "I think it's what you call seeing beyond, and the giver asks him to describe it. So Jonas describes his experience with the apple. He describes looking at his friend who he's seen so many times, but something happened. She changed again.
And specifically her hair. It wasn't all of her. It was just her hair.
The giver asks, when I gave you the memory yesterday, the first one, the ride on the sled, did you look around? Jonas says, yes, but the snow in the air made it hard to see anything. And he asks, did you look at the sled? No, I only felt it under me. I dreamed of it last night too, but I don't remember seeing the sled in my dream either, just feeling it. And here the giver says, it came to me differently, but you can do something special. You can see beyond.
Call back the memory of this ride on the sled, just the beginning of it, where you're at the top of the hill before the slide starts. And this time, look down at the sled. And Jonas is confused because he thinks that the giver has to give him that memory in order to do it. But the giver explains, no, I gave you that memory already. It's yours now. You don't need me. Go back to the memory and look down. And Jonas does. He thinks about what he experienced the day before. He concentrates and he looks down upon the sled. And sure enough, the same thing, the same change occurs to the sled that occurred to the apple and to his friend's hair.
He says, this time it was not a fleeting impression. This time the sled had and continued to have, as he blinked and stared at it again, the same mysterious quality that the apple had had so briefly and Fiona's hair. But the sled did not change. It simply was whatever the thing was.
I'm right then, the giver said. You're beginning to see the color red. The what?
A world without color.
And again, what a skillful way of portraying this. How would you ever begin to explain that? How would you ever be able to explain to somebody who had never seen color what color is? And the giver tries. He says, once back in the time of the memories, everything had a shape and a size, the way things still do, but they also had a quality called color. And he explains this and how the hair on Fiona is red. I love that he says that that's quite distinctive, actually, and that the geneticists must be just furious that they haven't been able to get rid of it because the red still happens even if people can't see it.
Yeah, this line, we've never completely mastered sameness. They've tried to samify everyone. And earlier in the book, we said that little Gabriel and Jonas, they have pale eyes. They talked about shades, dark and light. There was never mention of color.
Never.
And it's so subtly done. If you didn't see it coming, this is his first experience with color at all. And in these memories, he's given color, and it doesn't go away once he has it.
And the giver tells Jonas that he actually sees color now all the time. He sees color all around him, and Jonas will too, as he receives the memories. But it's striking that within the memories, the color is always there, because that was before the time of sameness. There was always color then. And Jonas really actually, I think, looks forward to this idea of seeing color. But this also gives the giver the next idea of how he's going to help explain it. He says, close your eyes and be still now. I'm going to give you a memory of a rainbow. That's stunning. And what an incredible way of building us up to this and then explaining this concept of color. I've remembered this from the first time I read this book because it is so striking and so well done.
Jonas has a lot of questions. It does end with the rainbow, which is wonderful, but he asks, where did they go? Why did they disappear? And it says, the giver shrugged. Our people made that choice, the choice to go to sameness, before my time, before the previous time, back and back and back. And that's a recurring phrase for Jonas here, back and back and back, because these are memories beyond counting, beyond the generations they have any awareness of, back and back and back. It becomes a joke between the two of them, because this is so far back. Again, no one else remembers any of this, none of it. We relinquish color when we relinquish sunshine and did away with differences. We gained control of many things, but we had to let go of others. And Jonas says we shouldn't have. And the giver says, yeah, I agree.
He says it fiercely. Jonas said fiercely, there is no ferocity in this community. I mean, Lily had a little bit of anger as a child about the kid going on the slide, but That's different. Jonas is saying this fiercely. It says the giver looked startled at the certainty of Jonas's reaction. Then he smiled wryly. You've come very quickly to that conclusion, he said. It took me many years. Maybe your wisdom will come much more quickly than mine.
You know what it reminded me of is in A Wrinkle in Time when Meg is with Aunt Beast and Aunt Beast doesn't have eyes. It's not that she's blind. She doesn't see, cannot see. It's just not part of her body, her makeup. And Meg is trying to describe light. How do you describe light to someone without eyes? How do you describe color to someone who only sees gray? It's near impossible.
Two things I want to say on this, and I'm so glad you brought this up, that you brought Wrinkle in Time up, because sameness is a defining theme in this work. And all I can think about as the book progresses is Meg on Camazotz, where she's talking about to spare herself from it. She's going through the Declaration of Independence, talking about all men created equal, and it responds, that's what I'm offering, equality. And Meg shouts out, no, sameness is not equality. They're not the same thing. And we see this same message portrayed so poignantly in two very different ways. But yes, that tie into The Wrinkle of Time, I love, because I think these are both getting at a fundamental truth. The other one is I want to talk about one of my favorite lesser-known C.S. Lewis short stories. Have you read the one about the man and light?
No.
A man, as I understand it, he wrote a first draft of this when he was a very young man and then kind of developed it over time. I think I read somewhere that Owen Barfield had been shown a copy of it very early. It was never formally published during his lifetime, but I think it was included in The Dark Tower and Other Stories, which are not works that were completed in his lifetime, but that Walter Hooper shared with us. And it's a story of a man born blind, and then as an adult, he receives a surgery that restores his sight. And so it was a man who had never been able to see and now does. And he's asking everybody to describe, where is light? I thought that once I could see light. And everyone's trying to describe it to him. It's like, well, it's all around you. And he says, well, I can't see it. Well, yeah, you can. It's what helps you to see other things. And he just doesn't get it. And it's this ongoing discussion of this concept of light. And I won't ruin this story because the ending is quite striking, but it reminds me of this. And so many ties into these great other works.
Was that a parallel to the Country of the Blind? But isn't that an H.G. Wells?
H.G. Wells' Country of the Blind, I think, is fairly different.
Okay, that's not like a response to that one?
I don't think so. H.G. Wells' Country of the Blind is very good, and we might do it at some point. It's basically a loose story based off of the old phrase, in the country of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And so there's a concept of a seeing man who actually enters into a country of the blind, and he should rule it. But you find out quickly he does not. And it's a great story and has its own lessons. And so we'll just throw out some teasers here to some other wonderful stories that tie into this one.
Oh, you have to give me the Lewis one. That sounds good.
The Lewis one's great.
So days go by. Jonas continues training, learning, and it says they go through memories. He learns the names of the colors, and now he begins to see them all in his ordinary life. And he'll get glimpses of green on the lawn, and he can look at the river now and see color. He can look at the sky and see color. I mean, what a gift, truly.
But unfortunately, it's a gift he is receiving alone. Nobody else sees this, and nobody else understands, and he can't talk about his training. That's one of the rules. But he tries. I mean, he's only 12. And so this 12-year-old is trying to connect with people around him, and the learning is fantastic because he talks about the idea of choices. He talks about Gabriel, his brother, and then he realized, well, he's not really my brother. He's this baby who's staying with us. But he talks about how that little baby can reach out to one thing, right, as if he wants to choose it. If you put two things in front of him, he could choose. And he says, wouldn't that be great if we could do that? With all these other things, if we could choose. And the giver points out, well, if you give that option, what's the risk? And Jonas sees it immediately. Oh, you could choose wrong. Think how dangerous that would be. Like, what if you got to choose your own job?
Or spouse.
Or spouse. I mean, it is just this concept of danger and risk. There is none of that in this community. And that was the decision that was made. But Jonas isn't satisfied. And so he continues to learn. He tries to see if his friend Asher can see color. He spends time staring at flowers near Asher to try and see if he can. And Asher just thinks he's being weird and uncomfortable. It doesn't go well. Apologies have to ensue. He also tries to give memories. He doesn't think he's really supposed to, but Lily, he wants her to be able to experience some of this stuff. And so he tries to give her a memory, and she complains that he's hurting her. He's pushing too hard with his hand. Again, he must apologize.
He's also frustrated and angry more, and he's coming away weighted with new knowledge. That's a phrase from in here. His training is giving him weight and burden. He's starting to feel that. In one of these memories, the giver had chosen a startling and disturbing memory that day. There's cracks of guns. There's warfare. There's bloodshed. There's people hurting each other, killing one another. And there's one of the soldiers, I believe, is thirsty and begs him for water. And it's interesting because Jonas really lives these memories as though he's in them. And this dying soldier begs him for water. And so it's not just that he's looking at this movie secondhand from the outside. He's living it and experiencing it. And who could come away from a battlefield unburdened? He feels the weight.
He feels the weight. And he keeps learning about what his life is going to be. He learns about the loneliness. And also, there are days where the giver doesn't give him any memories. He shows up, and the giver is just hunched over in pain and suffering, and he has him go away. He just can't do it. And this prompts Jonas to ask about the suffering, because the giver has been trying to give him more good memories than bad memories, but the bad memories are the ones that weight even more. And so the giver does start to share some of these, like the ones you described. He does it, I think, in a careful way. I mean, he is not out to just dump all these on Jonas, but he knows it's Jonas's job and he's going to do it. And so I think the first of these really bad ones he does is actually related to that sledding incident, because that was the first memory and one that Jonas holds dear to his heart, this exhilarating sled ride. Well, the giver gives him another memory of a sled ride, but it ends in a crash. It ends with broken limbs. And so it's this progression, and then it progresses up to things like that war scene, the boy dying in war, dying of thirst, hunger, all these things. And this leads to a discussion of why they do what they do. Why is the receiver of memory necessary? Part of it is for the wisdom it imparts, and the giver describes different situations. He describes that plane that Jonas remembers. It was the giver that told the elders not to shoot it down. This was a new thing that happened. The elders were not equipped to deal with a new thing, but the giver, because of these memories, has wisdom and can give guidance in these new situations. And there's several of those that he describes, this wisdom that he has been able to help the community with. And then it also talks about the burden and the pain. And I think somewhere in here is where Jonas asks again about, well, what happened with that failed one? The failed receiver of memory had only been in the role for 5 weeks. Jonas has now already been far past that. The giver had gone through a very similar process for her, but at the end of those 5 weeks, the receiver of memory left, wasn't around anymore. These memories don't die. And so the memories that receiver had received over that 5-week period had been dispersed into the community. And if we think about how this has impacted Jonas experiencing these, can you imagine what that did to the community? And now you see why there was the gasp, why there was the hiss, why they don't talk about that before. And Jonas describes about, well, wouldn't it be easier to share these? And the answer is, well, not easier for them. They would have to bear them. And so the choice that has been made is that we bear it. The receiver bears the pain, bears the burden, so that nobody else has to.
The giver tells them they need me and you. And they were reminded of that 10 years ago. And that's when the giver tells the story of the previously selected receiver, that girl, asked to be released. And that's why it's in Jonas's rules. There was like number 7 that he cannot ask to be released. He has to stay. The idea that these memories that she had when she was released just went wild. They went randomly to people. And Jonas here has a guide and someone to talk about these with and some kind of construct and reference for what they are. And like you said, the memories kind of build. He starts with that sunburn and then a broken bone and then pain and then bigger things like hunger and loneliness and war. I mean, what burdens those are. He can talk to the giver about them. And these random memories that just suddenly dumped into people's brains, they don't go into the details of it. Took some time, I guess, to recollect them. How would you deal with it? They'd have no reference for anything that they were trying to think through.
And this whole concept I find to be fascinating. And it's one that I think you could go down some fairly nerdy theologic and philosophical circles on this one, because there have been philosophers who have argued about a shared consciousness, a shared intellect, kind of one mind or nous models, these different things. But even if you're not wanting to go so kind of ethereal as that, how often do we do this? Where we pawn off things that as a community we don't want to deal with on specific people. You know, we don't want to pump our own septic tanks, so there's somebody who's willing to pump the septic tanks for us. They can deal with that, we don't have to. Now, that's a silly example, but a far more severe example would be things like hospice care, right? Being with the dead and dying. To the point that most of us in our society don't experience that at all. People still die, but we're not the ones in the room with them. We've kind of outsourced that. We've pawned that off to somebody else. Or even further, war. So many of us don't have to experience violence. We don't have to experience that. We're safe and protected and cocooned because we have outsourced that. We have assigned or selected somebody else to take on that role and bear those responsibilities for us. And I think you could really take this metaphor into interesting places. And it's one of the strengths and the powers of this book, is I think it can lend itself to that sort of conversation.
That's true, but there's also something to the idea of being an expert in what you do. Mm-hmm. Those people, I hope, are good at what they do and have a calling for it. So almost like the roles assigned in this community, people are happy to be assigned when it's a good fit. And I do think those skills you mentioned, you can be someone really good at pumping septic tanks or hospice care and someone not so good at it.
True.
And so I do think there's an ability level, but even if I don't work in hospice care, to have some awareness of what they do, I think is important. And I think that might be more of that sharing of memory that he's talking about, sharing the responsibility or knowing and thanking people who go fight on our behalf. That's important. And it is important to think about that, as you say, there are things I don't do or I don't want to do. I don't even know how to pump a septic tank. Mm-hmm. But being grateful for that and remembering that somebody has to do that work is of value. And they have really done away with that here. There's none of that.
Yeah, they don't know what the receiver does. Jonas didn't know till he started training.
I feel like they don't know what any of them do. It's very siloed. Even the sharing of feelings is one thing. So maybe inside of your own family, like Jonas would know what a nurturer does or what his mom does in the law. I forget what her title is. But outside of that, I don't think they'd really know other than what he's seen as a volunteer. But each kid got this massive packet when they got assigned. There's so much more to learn. They become an expert in that one thing only. Mm-hmm. That's all they do.
Yeah. Well, and it is interesting that as all this is going on, as Jonas is now having this whole other life in his role as the receiver with the giver, he's still a part of a family unit. He still has a father and a mother, and he's got Lily, this little sister, and he has Gabriel in the home, who his father, the nurturer, is trying so hard to bring up to standards, but it's not working because Gabriel will not sleep through the night. And this is driving the father, and more especially the mother, up the wall. They hate this. that they are not sleeping. This is not the way it's supposed to be. But Jonas offers to take the little boy. He says, well, he can sleep in my room. Let me see what I can do. And everyone thinks this is a terrible idea because Jonas is a heavy sleeper. But they point out that if the baby screams so hard to wake up Jonas, then other people will wake up too, and let's just try it.
At least he's willing.
Yeah. But then something very interesting happens.
He doesn't mean to do it.
No, it's accidental.
He says he's not aware of giving a memory, but he shares as he's trying to soothe this crying baby. He shares a memory. I think it's a lake and this boat on a lake, and there's a bright breezy day on a clear turquoise lake, and above him the white sail of a boat billowing as he moved along in the brisk wind. He was just thinking about it, but then he fell into this memory and he gave it to the baby. He gave it to Gabriel, who's turning into a toddler now. But it soothes the baby. And he gave this positive memory to him. And here Jonas has that same feeling. He becomes, in a small way, a giver. He's not sad to lose it because it helps his little brother.
And isn't that interesting that the baby can receive?
Mm-hmm.
Lily couldn't. Is it the eyes? I mean, that's the most logical explanation I can come up with.
I had a theory that may have the same birth mother. Because Lily said earlier when Gabriel came and commented on the pale eyes, if they had the same birth mother, they never reference their birth mother. They never meet their birth mother. But there might be some lineage thing here. Maybe the existing giver and now Jonas and then the baby are all related. Because the giver said he had a wife.
Yeah, he did.
And so it's this very lonely marriage because he couldn't share memories with her, books with her, nothing. It was very apart. But he did have a wife.
Yeah, interesting. There's one other passage in here, and again, we're lumping together a lot of these chapters with conversations with the giver and the receiver, but one of the really interesting ones that struck to me is when they were talking about the memories and how the memories would just go back to the community if a receiver died. There were a few things. I mean, Jonas keeps asking questions, and so he asked the question about, well, what if I fell in the river? I mean, he's a good swimmer, so he's not really worried about it, but what would happen?
Hypothetically.
Yeah, and the giver's like, oh, stay away from rivers.
Yeah.
Because if the last one, after 5 weeks, he who has been doing this for months, it would be utter chaos and beyond, and he doesn't even know what would happen. And so that's a terrifying thought. The other thing that's interesting is there is a discussion about facts and wisdom. And Jonas talks about the experts. He says, my instructors in science and technology have taught us about how the brain works. And he starts talking about electrical impulses and all this stuff. But then he sees the look on the giver's face. And the giver's response is, they know nothing. That is fascinating to me. And I think so true. In our technical mastery of the world, we tend to believe we know a lot more than we do. And we think because we can measure the way electricity goes across neurons or the way blood pumps through an artery that we can understand things about the human soul. We can't. And the giver is very clear about this. And remember, what distinguishes the receiver of memory? It's wisdom because of the memories. The facts cannot lead to wisdom. There's more to it. You have to have the memories, the heritage, the past, the suffering, the pain, the joy, all these things that make us who we are. And I think that's an incredibly important point that gets snuck in here in such a skillful way.
Mm-hmm. So this is hard, though. Jonas, at times, I think it's especially after the experience of warfare and battle, he doesn't want to go back. He doesn't want the burden. He doesn't want the honor that comes with it. No more wisdom. He doesn't want the pain. But he also sees the giver in pain. And it helps this man who he's come to care for him to take some of that burden. He always goes back. But it does say after extremely hard ones, extremely heavy ones, that the giver is very gentle with him afterwards. And he shares wonderful memories. Jonas gets to see a birthday party. No one in this community even has a birthday. They're all lumped together. And this one child is singled out, but in this wonderful, joyful way. The joy of being an individual, special and unique and proud. It says he goes to museums, he sees paintings, he sees animals. He sees a horse, he sees an elephant, he sees, I think, a hippo. All those things that were imaginary almost. He actually has the memory of them and what they do, how they move, different things in different memories. And I love this because this is absolutely a conversation that would happen after all this. Jonas asks him, what's your favorite? What's your favorite memory of all the memories you carry? What's your favorite? And the giver's like, oh, I'll give it to you.
And Jonas tries to talk him out of it. No, you keep it. I don't want you to give it up. But the giver says, don't worry, I've got plenty. And he does, and he shares his favorite memory.
I love how it's phrased. The giver smiled, lie down, he said. I'm happy to give it to you. So good. And I don't even know what my favorite memory, if you had to pick one, but that's all this man has done is sat in these memories, good and bad. His whole career, his whole life, this is his hobby and his job. So to pick one, though, how much do you have to love it? And I think it's just an example, and it's why he's happy to give, because there are others. And really, in essence, it's simple. It's a party. There's a family having a party. There's fire. There's lights. Clearly, it's Christmas time. There's lights, and there's love.
And there's so much more. There's a mom, a dad, there's kids, and then there's some older people in the room that Jonas doesn't recognize and asks about them. Who are they?
Grandparents. In this community, there's this house of the old, which, as we said, was wonderful. There's a lot of good about the care that they receive. But here the grandparents are in their home and they know each other. This is a unit. They have chosen one another. And when the memories pass, the giver asks him, what did you perceive? Warmth and happiness and family. That's what it was. And here's a word that he hasn't known before. It's love.
Yeah, this is great. It says, I certainly liked the memory. This is Jonas speaking. I certainly liked the memory, though I can see why it's your favorite. I couldn't quite get the word for the whole feeling of it, the feeling that was so strong in the room. Love, the giver told him. And this is just a slap in the face. Because remember, we started reading this story in what felt like a utopian society. There was a family unit where they were safe and fed and warm and comfortable and were sharing their thoughts and their feelings and belonged and knew their roles. But he doesn't even know the word love. I mean, that totally shifts the entire perspective of now 3/4 of the book up to this point.
And Jonas still is trying to make sense of it in his mind. And he's like, I do understand that it wouldn't work very well if you had a mother and a father and it's just messy and, the grandparents lived in the home and maybe they wouldn't know how to take care of them right. Or there's risk with this. Definitely risk.
I mean, they had fire in the room.
There was fire.
How dangerous is that?
He says, I can certainly see why those things were outlawed. Still, I did like the light they made, the fireplace, the lights, and the warmth. There was warmth and love, and that is the giver's favorite memory. I love that.
But Jonas is still working between two worlds here. He's got this experience with the giver, but then he goes back to his family unit. He goes back to his home, and he asks his parents, because again, he can ask questions, and they are going to answer him. And they're willing to talk with him. They ask what the question, and the question is, do you love me? Says there was an awkward silence for a moment. Then father gave a little chuckle. Jonas, you of all people, precision of language, please. And then what follows is a heartbreaking and sterile conversation full of kindness. There's nothing mean about what the father and the mother describe here, but they ask him to make more precise statements because love clearly doesn't mean anything. It's far too broad. Do you mean, are we proud of you? Do we like you? Of course we do. And at the end, this is so striking. Do you understand why it's inappropriate to use a word like love? Mother asked. Jonas nodded. Yes, thank you, I do, he replied slowly. It was his first lie to his parents.
It's devastating. They laugh at him for asking, "Do you love me?" They laugh down at him. Oh, it's wrenching.
But there's somebody else in the house who is now sharing the nights with Jonas. And this is Gabriel. This is the little baby. And Jonas, who now knows the concept of love, is starting to redirect it to this new child. There's one other really important thing that comes out of this. At the end of the chapter, it says, "The next morning, for the first time, Jonas did not take his pill. Something within him, something that had grown there through the memories, told him to throw the pill away."
The next day, unexpectedly, there's an unscheduled holiday, all capital letters. It's announced to the community. I get the feeling this never happens. I don't think we get to learn why it happens, do we?
No, I don't think we do learn why. But yeah, very rare. It's not unheard of. I mean, they all know kind of what to do, but very rare. And they love it. It's so exciting. Again, I guess I'm not using language precisely. We've just learned they can't love. But they enjoy this very much.
They enjoy it. Use precise language. I know. I think in the first 2 minutes, I used boy and girl.
Yeah.
So vague.
Yeah.
I would not do very well with precise language, but this is a treat, a day off. Everybody gets the day off, the whole community. And so he actually gets to go see friends, and he's looking around. Jonas has colors now. They stick. He has them all the time, and he just loves it. It's a beautiful day, but he's looking at the river. And he saw all of the light and color and history it contained and carried in its slow-moving water. And he knew that there was an elsewhere from which it came and an elsewhere to which it was going. He's grown up a lot. I think it's been almost a year at this point. So he's got a lot of memories now, both good and bad. But there is a richness and that word depth that he'd applied to the eyes, that's in his soul now. Jonas has more depth. But these other friends of his, they're almost 13. They're playing a game. It's a day off. It's almost like recess. They're playing a game where they're shooting at one another.
Good guys and bad guys.
Yeah. Classic, right? This upsets Jonas. He has seen things now where this is not a game. And they're like, "Get out of the way. You're messing up the game." Or I think one comment's like, "Oh, I got you. You're dead." The fact that he's seen and experienced a battle and the trauma and the devastation of it, this is no longer a game for him. And it pains him to even be there.
This really hit me hard and spoke to my heart, because when you have seen things, you can't see some of these other things the same way again. To these children, this is purely a game. It's simple, it's innocent, it's fun. I have no criticism of them playing this game. We all played games like this when we were children. But this happened to me. I'm a doctor, and I have seen pain and suffering and maiming and bullet wounds and injury. And all of a sudden, when I see people pretending to shoot each other, I can't handle it anymore. I am a veteran. I have seen people blown up. I have seen lives ended. I have seen things change. And then when you encounter other people who have not seen that, they can't understand how it hurts you and why it hurts you. And so, friends, if you know somebody with PTSD, if you know people who have experienced suffering and pain, be gentle with them. And understand that the reality they're seeing is not the reality that you're playing. And again, I'm not trying to stop people from playing games, but this one really hit home and hard to me. I mean, once I got into medicine, I stopped watching action movies. I stopped watching anything with sad endings. I want the cheesiest, happiest, most cheerful things. Old musicals, bring them, because of exactly what gets portrayed here. And so, again, I am so grateful to Lois Lowry for expressing this in such a way that I could identify with, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So, incredibly powerful chapter and incredibly powerful scene.
And for Jonas, it shapes all those other feelings that people used to share. Because Lily, his little sister, had been angry, right? She shook her little fist. But she didn't really know what anger meant. He has anger at the brokenness of that memory. His mother had shared that she felt sad today because this thing had happened. This is a deeper level of that at the core of him, in his bones. And yeah, conveyed amazingly well at just the pain of it.
Mm-hmm. And then there's one other thing that happens on this unscheduled holiday before the day is over. The father says, well, I got to get back and I've got to go to bed because this is going to be a hard day tomorrow. Twins are being born. And everybody knows what's going to happen because you can't have twins in this society. Again, 50 kids. You don't get more than that. So one of them is going to be released. And that is his father's job. That's part of being a nurturer.
They have a system for it because they have systems for everything. But as Jonas is walking around, it talks about how he's just overwhelmed by these feelings and that he feels such love for his friends playing this game. He doesn't hate them for playing this game. He has such deep love for them, but they can't feel it back. It says, without the memories, they cannot love him back. And what a lonely, lonely place to be. But at night still, that baby, now a toddler, Gabe, he is starting to thrive. He's still a part of their family, and they weren't supposed to become attached. But Jonas calls him his little brother, and he continues to share these memories of comfort. He always sleeps in the room with Jonas now and is able to rest at night. And it's this mix of things that you feel deeply, where he's caring for this little boy, his little brother, but also carrying this deep sadness. It's extremely both.
And the next day when he goes back to the giver, he's got thoughts. I mean, these things are weighing on him. He's feeling the weight. And he says, Giver, do you ever think about release? And this is the chapter where we learn more about release.
Jonas knows it's in his rules that he can't ask for release. And he begs the giver to tell him what happened with the girl before, the girl who was selected before. And he knows it was a female and that she has to be released. That's all he's really learned up to this point. And the giver, this is painful for him. He hesitates, but he tells Jonas her name was Rosemary. The giver says, when she came to me for the first time, she sat there in the chair where you sat on your first day. She was eager and excited and a little scared, and we talked. I tried to explain things as well as I could. And Jonas sees the similarity, just like me. We talked, you shared memories. But this one, he shared the hard things too soon. He'd referenced earlier how he'd learned some things and how he had given memories to Jonas in terms of guiding him with the positives first, really building into, so like the positives of the sun, the sunshine, but then the sunburn. This man has never done this before. I mean, and every person I feel like would be so different in the giving and the receiving. I think it was loneliness and hunger, starvation, these kinds of memories. They just shattered her. And it said that initially she laughed in this room that had been silent and he'd been alone, but her laughter would ring in this room and he just loved that.
He said he loved her laughter and he loved her. Mm-hmm. He says, I feel it for you too, to Jonas. He loves these receivers and he loved her.
But the pain of those memories, she couldn't carry him. And she told the giver not to spare her. Yes, give them to me. It's my job. I must take them. She asked him and begged him for them. And so he did. He gave her what she asked for, and she could not bear it. And she did not come back.
Yeah, he was told that she requested release, and release is always granted when requested.
So they added that rule when Jonas was selected.
Yeah, so that he couldn't. We already talked about what happened when this occurred, that those memories flooded back to the community, and that didn't go so well.
But Jonas looks at the clock because he knew that his father would have to choose a twin today and one would be released.
Because the giver points out to Jonas, they record all the releases. This is a very efficient society. And you, as the receiver of memory, have access to anything. You can watch the release. And Jonas knows that his father was going to do a release that, I missed it, he says. It already happened. But the speaker says, or the giver says, well, that's not an issue. It's recorded. Would you like to see it? And Jonas hems and haws a little, but the giver is pretty clear that, no, I think you should do this. And again, back to the 1950s, business thing, the giver, flicks the intercom to his attendant, please bring the tapes of this morning. And they're able to sit and they're able to watch his father at work. I don't like describing this.
No.
And Jonas certainly doesn't like watching it because everything about this is shattering. Because Jonas can love. He stopped taking his pills. He has these memories. He has these experiences. And I think he loves his father. And everything we've seen from his father so far has been wonderful. He's been caring and kind and efficient and concerned about the new children. I mean, there's been description after description of him bouncing babies on his knee and waving with their little hands. He was born to be a nurturer and really is gifted at it. But he's also got a job and his own set of rules. And Jonas at first is excited to see his dad working. He's never gotten to see his father working. And he's been told by his father what's going to happen, that he's going to weigh these two identical twins. The fatter one gets to join the community, and the one that weighs less is going to be released. But this is more like a Roberto situation. The elderly, the baby didn't do anything wrong. They just can't have another one. And so he says he'll make it comfy. There's a brief ceremony, and then it will be released. And so Jonas is kind of excited to see this. And his dad is charming and chipper as ever, talking in baby talk to the little baby. He gets everything kind of set up and ready to go. But the room is very sterile. The room is very cold. And then all of a sudden, his dad pulls out a syringe. Jonas doesn't like syringes. Most kids don't. They know about inoculations and vaccinations and things like that. But it makes sense that this baby would probably need something like that before it goes elsewhere. But then his father, all the time speaking in this very soft and kind voice, fills the syringe and injects it into the baby's head. He explains he needs a vein in baby talk to the baby. And the veins in his arms are too small, but the one in the anterior fontanelle is big enough that he can inject the medicine directly into it. And the baby spasms, and the baby dies. His father puts away the stuff, cleans up the room. The baby goes in a box, and then it goes into the garbage chute. And the baby has been released.
Jonas' mind screams. He killed it. My father killed it. He cannot handle this with all the weight and things, heavy things that he's seen. This is so personal and horrible to see his father kill a baby. I'm glad you read it. I couldn't do it.
It's horrible. And it is deservedly horrible. And Jonas can't handle it. And he can't go back to his father that night. And the giver gives him an out. He says, it's okay. You stay here tonight, we'll say, as part of your training. And so he has his assistant call his parents, and Jonas is going to stay the night with the giver. But the giver gives him more information after this. We were already talking about Rosemary, and we've been talking about release, and now we know what release is. It says, the giver turned to him quite calmly, he related. When the speaker notified me that Rosemary had applied for release, they turned on the tape to show me the process. There she was. My last glimpse of that beautiful child, waiting. They brought in the syringe and asked her to roll up her sleeve. You suggested, Jonas, that perhaps she wasn't brave enough? I don't know about bravery, what it is, what it means. I do know that I sat here numb with horror, wretched with helplessness, and I listened as Rosemary told them that she would prefer to inject herself. Then she did so. I didn't watch. I looked away.
The giver turned to him. Well, there you are, Jonas. You were wondering about release. Jonas just screams.
This description is good. It says, Jonas felt a ripping sensation inside himself, the feeling of terrible pain clawing its way forward to emerge in a cry.
So I kind of remembered this book, like plot points about it, and I vaguely remembered this, but I'm amazed I read this in 5th grade. Man, you feel it. It is so heart-wrenching. And the giver, his ability and choices to, and how he provides these truths. These are facts. This is what release has meant. And people talk about it like it's so wonderful. The Roberto was pure happiness. Pure happiness. They went to some elsewhere of such joy. They're going to send this baby elsewhere. What they think it was, I don't think they thought at all.
Yeah.
I don't think they think about it at all. And so here where he's confronted with this terrible burden, but then the giver also told Jonas he loved him. That's what he craves. Nobody else even has the ability to love him back. And so it's this wonderful and horrible juxtaposition of gifts of emotion and love and joy that they can experience together in these memories and in their time together talking, but also just a horrendous tragedy of the means by which this community exists.
Yeah. At what cost? And both Jonas and the giver are pretty clear now that they both think this is wrong. That everything the society is based on, the cost for their community is just too high. It's not the way it's meant to be. And so they have this time now together. They have this evening, and this is where they can start planning. Because Jonas had earlier asked what would happen if he drowned in the river, for say. And the memories would have to go to the community. And they both have come to the conviction that that has to happen. Not that Jonas has to drown, right? He's not suicidal. That's not what we're talking about. But that the community has to receive the memories back. And the only way that they can figure out of making that happen, because the giver has been thinking about this for a long time, but until he had Jonas, he couldn't come up with a plan. But now they can. If Jonas were to leave, if he were to leave the community, not under release, if he were to escape, they both believe that those memories would then sort back to the community. And Jonas is willing to do it, and they come up with a really elaborate plan that's really clever and sounds really good, but Jonas keeps begging the giver to go with him. And the giver keeps saying, no, 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 they're going to need me. I can't do it. I have to stay here. It's my role in the community.
What do you think of that as his role as a guide? Do you think he's right to stay?
I think so. I could be talked in or out of this one, but remember, this is a system that has been around for generations, back and back and back and back. These individuals are literally drugging themselves to cap any sense of extreme emotion, one way or the other. These are not bad people. I mean, his father is not a bad man. We learn that Fiona is learning how to do releases for the elderly. She is not a bad little girl. They're doing this out of duty, and they are duped into this. None of them know the cost or the burden. And so I think there is something incredibly noble about the giver trying to step into that role. Because I don't think fundamentally it is the individuals in the community's fault that they're in this situation. And so I do think there would be an extreme act of cruelty to throw this on them without offering them some guidance.
Yeah. So when I read this in 5th grade, the ending really bothered me, and I liked it much better this time. And I think it's exactly that the giver does have more wisdom than Jonas does. Jonas is about a year in. Mm-hmm. They're coming up on the next annual ceremony, and that's actually going to be the mechanism for him to escape. That's the plan. But the giver, as he said, he's been able to guide Jonas to a certain extent through these memories. And if you think about Jonas leaving and his memories going to people and they having to deal with that, there's no other receiver. At some point, the giver will die. And then what? Mm-hmm. If he were to die, and we understand he still has the bulk of the memories. He's lightened by what he's given to Jonas, and better able to carry it for now. But then what would they have done if everything came to them all at once? So I do think the wisdom behind it is better, and he finally convinces Jonas because Jonas keeps begging him over and over and over, please come with me, please come with me. He says, no, I'm going to see my daughter again. Rosemary was his daughter. That wrecked me.
Yeah, and I remembered most of this. I didn't remember that from when I read it before. There's one other part of this conversation, though, that I think is a little bit more joyous with all this dark stuff. Remember that Jonas had started with this concept of seeing beyond, with this idea of color. And the giver at that time had said, well, it happened to me differently. He has color now. He understands color, and he could explain that to Jonas, but that wasn't what he saw beyond. And Jonas asks him, before I go, can you tell me? And the giver is a little sheepish here, and he says, yeah, I actually didn't want to give this one away because I love these memories, but it's time. Okay, here you go. He says, you can think about it as hearing beyond. It's something called music. And I think that's wonderful that Jonas went at this visually, but the giver, his lead into this was music. That means nobody in this community knows music. They don't get to experience that. It's an impoverished existence. But I also enjoy what a show of love this is between Jonas and the giver, because Jonas tells him, no, you keep that. You'll need that. Jonas doesn't need it.
The plan, as you said, was elaborate, and I'm not going to cover it all because it doesn't happen that way. It's a good plan.
Really good plan.
But Jonas goes home in the meanwhile, acting like all is normal, and he learns that Gabriel is going to be released.
Because Gabriel had been doing so well in Jonas's room. And so this seemed like a perfect opportunity when Jonas was spending the night with the giver to have him be retested because December is coming up, right? This year is coming up. Well, with Jonas gone, Gabriel screamed all night long. So Gabriel has now failed. And again, he doesn't even have that name yet. This community has not authorized that name for him. But he's going to be released. And Jonah asks, when? And the answer is tomorrow.
That night, Jonas was forced to flee. And he feels bad doing, but he takes his father's bicycle because it has a child's seat on it. The adults have a children's seat when they have children with them. He steals his father's bicycle and he rides away. He's not able to say goodbye to the giver, and he knew that in the danger of his escape, he must be absolutely silent. But with his heart and mind, he called back and hoped that with his capacity for hearing beyond, the giver would know that Jonas had said goodbye. After the evening meal, Jonas takes Gabriel and they go. And we know a little bit more that there are other communities around. You can order a car. The giver could have ordered a car. That was part of the plan to get him closer to the borders, but nobody really knows where or how far. And there's those planes. The planes aren't allowed to fly overhead, but they sure seem to do surveillance. So Jonas in this time, in this escape, it's amazing. He shares his memories of coldness with him and Gabriel because the planes have heat-seeking technology, which is crazy. They can seek them out and they're going to find him and release them. And he knows what that means now. So he makes them colder with his memories and he shares it with Gabe to protect his little brother. Amazing.
Yeah, it is impressive for a 13-year-old to be taking on this responsibility and doing that. But remember, this is no ordinary 13-year-old, and he has memories now. He's got wisdom. He has been able to develop this, but he also has love. And it is the love for Gabriel that makes him go out on this quest. And make no mistake, this is an ordeal, and it is brutal because that cold is literally cold. I mean, he tries to comfort Gabriel. He's got some store of warm memories and sunshine and sailing and peace, but this is a hard trip. And I mean, it talks about how back when he was young and he used that phrase, I'm starving, and they were very clear to him that no, he wasn't starving. He is now, and Gabriel is now. And they keep pedaling, they keep moving. and they keep trying to dodge the planes. And there's this really interesting scene where Gabriel, who's starting to talk, says, "Plane, plane," and Jonas snatches him up and they go to hide. It's not a plane. It's a bird. He sees animals. He feels sunshine. He's out of the climate control. But now all of a sudden, these things like hills, which were so interesting in the memories, are really hard to pedal up.
That's true.
These things like rain that are fascinating are really cold, and you never quite get dry. And the ordeal just keeps getting more and more challenging.
Well, and it says that he sheds the memories, right? That's the whole idea, is if and when he leaves the boundaries of this community, the memories that he's been given go away, that he's received. And the planes diminish, but yes, then he starts to make his own memories. He has these extreme experiences, because there are wonderful ones where he sees a real bird, like you said. But yeah, things like hunger and cold, truly, especially when you're caring for a toddler. How hard. So this is a hard scene, but I think it's necessary because he's lost those memories that he was given, but now he really is making his own. He is experiencing fully this adventure, this escape, and it is life-threatening. They are near death.
But he always has this sensation that he's moving towards something. And then finally, there's a hill. And again, the hills are now hard, but he trudged upward. And it says, as he approached the summit of the hill, at last something began to happen. He was not warmer. If anything, he felt more numb and more cold. He was not less exhausted. On the contrary, his steps were leaden, and he could barely move his freezing, tired legs. But he began suddenly to feel happy. He began to recall happy times. He remembered his parents and his sister. He remembered his friends Asher and Fiona. He remembered the giver. Memories of joy flooded through him suddenly. And then he got to the top of this hill, and he remembers this place because in the snow and the cold and the ice, he finds a sled. And he knows that as they go down the hill on this sled, there is going to be warmth and welcome and a home and a place that will accept him, and he will finally be away from the community.
And it's December. Those lights aren't just house lights. They're Christmas lights. I love that detail. Like, who puts an annual ceremony in the beginning of December in a book? Well, here it is. The giver's favorite memory is fulfilled, where he finds this place, this home ahead of him with the Christmas lights twinkling. Love it.
Now, we do need to talk about this because there are alternative ways of reading this story. That is exactly how I read it.
Me too.
And I walked away from this feeling comforted and reassured because I only do happy endings. Sad endings make me sad and I avoid them. And so that is the way I read this book, which is why it was so weird when I had a conversation with my wife many years later, who also loves this book, and talked about how sad the ending was. And I said, come again? And the way she read it was that this was hypothermia and hallucination, and that Jonas and Gabriel died on that journey. That this move into the home and warmth was death and hopefully heaven. That wrecked me.
That's not how I read it at all.
Reading through it this time, I can absolutely see that reading of it. And you know what this reminds me of?
No.
Have you seen the movie Shane?
Yes, I have.
Are you familiar with the argument about the end of the movie Shane?
Do you know the only reason we know about that is from a different movie? There's another movie, more current. I mean, it's probably like 20 years old.
Sure. Yeah.
But they have this conversation about whether or not Shane died at the end. Shane is an old cowboy movie, a Western. He totally dies at the end.
Well,
in my opinion.
So I have not seen that other movie, but I have seen Shane. And yes, Shane is a gunslinger. He's a hero that reluctantly gets drawn back in order to fight this one last great battle. And he, of course, dominates because he's amazing, but he gets shot during it. And the little boy, he explains to the little boy who he has befriended, oh, spoilers for the movie Shane, that he has to go. There's no place for him here as a fighter in this world, in this homestead. And so he leaves the boy with his father and his loving family, and he rides off into the sunset. This is the cowboy gunslinger who can come in and do good, but doesn't have a home for himself. And you just see him riding away on the horse. And this is where the argument comes in, because is he alive or is he dead from that gunshot?
He slumps in the saddle. I have it flipped. I think Shane dies at the end. And I did not read this one as though Jonas and Gabriel died at the end. Again, I can see it, except now we know there are sequels.
I was going to say, unlike Shane, we have a definitive answer to this particular argument. And though I can totally see somebody reading this on his own, reading it in that way, this is the first of a quartet. And so we know that he lives. So friends and listeners, rejoice. It's a happy ending for Jonas and Gabriel. Although I haven't actually read the other three, so I don't know what happens next.
But they involve Jonas and Gabriel, I think. But I said the ending really bothered me when I read it when I was young. And not because I thought he died at the end. It was because there was no closure. You know, he goes down the hill on this sled and he's got the baby with him. He sees the lights. The end. I felt it very abrupt. There's so much more story for how rich this is, for how much depth and more story there is to tell about Jonas and even about the giver. Like, I wanted to know what happened in the community. Something looking back, Jonas doesn't get to know either. So this kid, the wisdom he has, I shouldn't even call him a kid now, for what he's experienced and seen and done, a young man now, who saved his little brother along the way. He gave up so much, and it's just wonderful. I was really pleased with this. It is hard to read. It's a hard concept that looking at his dad who raised him, to know that he killed a baby offhand, probably not his first one, because he's described doing this other times when there's a twin and they take turns releasing them. But that the father, Fiona, they couldn't even be blamed for it because they just had no concept, no memory even of what they were doing, no real emotion with it. There's just so much in there, packed in there. And how much wisdom, how much growth, how much maturity Jonas had to develop in a year.
The other thing about this for me that really struck me on this read through, I know people who, if you portrayed this world, they would jump at it because the community works. No one's really unhappy. Everything functions. Everyone's fed. Everyone has a job. Everyone has a task. Everyone knows their place. It is an exquisitely functioning civilization. And I know people who would say, yep, this is a good thing. To me, it's abhorrent. To me, the cost is far too high. But I think it's a good lesson to see how different people can see the world differently. And there are those who would find the trade-off worth it. That was just a sobering thought to me as I was reading through it this time.
Well, and going back to Lois Lowry's introduction, where she said people responded to this book and in polar opposite ways. Some loved it and thought it was amazing and so insightful and taught all these wonderful lessons, and some accused her of being evil. You know, the extreme differences in the book are also extremely how people read it. And it kind of depends where you're sitting, I guess, how you look at it. To me, the cost, both the good and the bad, I read it and there was no piece of my brain that could conceptualize of living a life without sunshine or color or music. How could it be? And that they've chosen that as the better thing, for myself, I believe is wrong. And don't kill babies.
And don't kill babies.
That just hurts to even.
Such a hard chapter, but the book would not hit as deeply without those depths.
Yeah. So with this brother, I was just thinking about memory, because I do think it is a a polarizing thing because memory can be a wonderful thing, but also such a burden, clearly in this book, but just anecdotally, that's true. So I just looked up some quotes, and it's funny how many quotes are just attributed to a mix of people now, and I don't know who's right. So I just wrote down a few of them that I thought expressed kind of that opposite view of memory. So here's one. Happiness is good health and a bad memory. Attributed to both Ingrid Bergman, the actress, which I like that one, and Albert Schweitzer.
Okay.
They're not the same person.
I don't think so.
This one, or a paraphrase of it, probably goes to a lot of different people, but a liar should have a good memory. That's so true.
Yeah.
So the references I found were Quintillion and Ozzy Osbourne.
I'm not sure Ozzy is reading much Quintillion.
Well, I don't know. And Ozzy said he didn't have a good memory, so he's not a liar, I guess. But I like this one very much. This is by James Barrie, the author of Peter Pan.
Yeah.
God gave us memory so that we might have roses in December.
Oh, I do love that.
I love that. I would take like an embroidery of that, put it on the wall.
That's
I love
beautiful.
that.
Yeah.
This one's funny. It was by a newspaper columnist named Herb Can, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I have a memory like an elephant. I remember every elephant I've ever met. And here, I think we will end with this one. This is from Thomas More, Catholic saint, yes? Thomas More?
Yes.
Fond memory brings the light of other days around me.
And with that, we'll turn the page, and we hope you join us for the next chapter.